hello, hello. Welcome everyone to Patch and Play. This is the first episode I'm doing on a Saturday. Been doing these on Fridays, but I thought I'd change the day up a little bit so people who are usually at work on Friday afternoons will have an opportunity to check out the stream. So, warm welcome to everyone who's here and will be here. My name's Jimmy, aka Perceptes, and I started doing these streams about a month ago, I think. And the idea is to just spend a couple of hours messing around with the modular, doing something with the chat, whoever is around and wants to participate, something that is unplanned, so I don't really think in advance about what we might do on a given stream. And I want it to be both entertaining, obviously, and also educational. So if there's questions that people have about modular in general, about specific modules that I have, about modular techniques, recording, anything you want to talk about music tech, then let's talk about it. Let me check if anyone is here yet. Oh yes, we do have a few people. Cicero, welcome to the stream. Thanks for stopping by. Good to see you. Neil, popping in to see what you're up to today. Well, we don't know yet, but thank you for checking out the stream, and you can help me decide what we'll do today. I guess I should ask for a level check, make sure everyone can actually hear what I'm saying. That would probably be good. So if levels sound okay, let me know in chat, and we'll just hang out for a few minutes and think about what we might do today. So I think this is the fourth stream that I've done, and I wasn't sure how it would go, given that I am not really planning what we're going to do each time. But I think it's actually been, so far, pretty much exactly what I expected, which was to do something that's at least partially directed by conversation that happens live and what people are interested in, and then a little bit about whatever I think of. So we'll see where that takes us today. All right, sound is okay. James Bond 339, welcome to the stream. Thank you for checking it out. All right, well, yeah, so again, if there's anything specific that you want to see, anything specific you want to explore, please do let me know, and I'm happy to take your directions. But in the absence of that and getting us going, I guess we should do our usual sound check just to make sure you can hear the sound of the modular as compared to my voice. So let me patch in my closest oscillator to the output. There's a nice juicy wave from Castor and Pollux. How's the audio here? Is that too loud or too quiet, especially compared to my voice? Can you still hear me over the audio without either one being annoying? That is the question of the day. Lots of mutable, some make noise instro. I don't think I have any make noise modules. You're maybe looking at, well, I guess make noise modules tend to be black. The single manufacturers that I have the most of are definitely mutable instruments. I have a good amount of IntelliGel, a few here, and then all of the 1U rows. And then I have a lot of noise engineering, which is pretty much almost all this bottom row on the black case. I think that those are my most represented manufacturers. You know, I know make noise is super popular, like Maths in particular is, I think, the #1 module in Eurorack. But I don't know. I think I'm a little turned off by sort of the design of their panels, kind of the wild and crazy sort of labeling. I mean, like anything, you'd learn what everything does, but I just don't really like their aesthetic that much. And since, you know, part of modular is building your own custom instrument, the aesthetics do matter to me. I mean, as you can see, I've kind of organized my cases into light and dark, which was not the easiest thing to make work. That's not to knock make noise. Totally 100% preference. James Bond, you've watched these before. What I've liked about the streams is that it mirrors my own work with my case. A lot of times videos are so scripted that I feel like I should come in. Yeah. You know, I was just talking to my partner about this. I was up most of last night working on a video for next week where I'm doing a deep dive into Kinks. Let me switch to my left camera. Kinks, this utility module for mutable instruments. I'm like a long video where I'm going through all of the sections, explaining them all and doing patch examples of how you would use them. And I was discovering that I'm actually like more anxious about speaking to the recording than I am doing these live streams. Like I'm more conscious about what I'm saying, and I kind of trip over my words more and have to do like I lose what I'm saying or just kind of speak awkwardly. I don't know what it is, but those are actually harder to do. But I've also, my performance videos are mostly what I post on this channel. And I've had a lot of feedback of people saying, this is cool, but even with the patch explanations, I don't really get what I'm looking at. It's just like a bunch of wires and what sounds like normal electronic music. Like, why is all this necessary? Like, how did you get from nothing to what I'm looking at? And so I've had a few requests to do like a patch from scratch sort of thing, where I do a video where it's starting with nothing, like what you see here, and then showing how I got all the way up to basically where I ended up for a song. And I thought that a live stream was probably a better format for that than a video, because, well, maybe I'll do a video like that at some point, but like when I do one of those performance videos, it takes a long time to get to that point, and I can't really imagine doing a video that's like many hours long, potentially like a whole afternoon or something. And also, if I'm filming that long, I don't really know that what I'm going to end up with, because it's very experimental, and so I might film for a long time and decide what I end up with the end I don't really like and isn't worth recording. And so I feel like the stakes are a bit lower in a live stream, because like, it's live. It might end up being kind of throwaway. We're not going to be making a masterpiece here in a couple of hours, but it's probably a better opportunity to sort of show what do you do with a blank slate sort of problem with, I guess, modular specifically, but this is true in songwriting in general, is that getting started can be pretty difficult. So I think this is a good format for doing that. And it's kind of where we've gone. I don't know that we've made I wouldn't say we've made a complete song in any of the previous videos. And I don't know that we'll ever get there in the course of 2 hours, especially with, if more people start to show up and there's a lot more interaction with chat, then that starts to consume the time. And I also find that people are like very interested in the gear. Like if you're showing up to a modular stream, probably you're interested in modules. And so I get questions about, why'd you put this in your case? And like, let's hear some examples of X, Y, or Z. And doesn't leave a lot of time for like a complete patch. But hopefully for the people that want to see sort of the initial stages of the process, this can scratch that itch. And of course, I'm open to feedback. So if you feel like it's still not really giving you a sense of like, how do you really make something, then maybe I will try to do a video of that type of thing at some point. Maybe it won't be as bad as I'm imagining. There is a benefit to showing that not every session ends up with a work that you want to record. Yes, that's true. That is very true. And I think we will get some of that with a live stream as well, because obviously I have no idea what's going to happen. And so I may do something stupid or something that doesn't make sense or make a mistake, which is its own value, but I don't want everything to be like that. So if anyone has a specific thing they would like to do, please let me know. Otherwise, I think maybe we'll do something a little more focused on rhythm this time. Do some drums. In the last stream, we did kind of a classic rings into beads mutable instruments patch. Someone suggested doing something with only mutable instruments modules. So we tried to not use anything but mutable. I have enough of them that basically worked. So that was kind of the obvious thing to do with modular. But I think maybe we'll do something a little different. So my drums are all in the right case. Maybe we'll focus on that. Let me switch to my right view. Here's my right case. Hopefully this is sharp enough that you can at least read some of the text on the labels for the dials and stuff. You'll have to let me know. Like it looks, I mean, obviously I can see it in front of me, and from what I can see, the text is sort of readable. It's hard to get a good zoomed in picture of both cases like that. But anyway, this is the case where I have my drum modules. And this is actually kind of how I started in modular, was by making a little drum machine. So the original plan was to have kind of something that's driven by grids, which is this black module right here. Well, I guess they're all black, but this is a clone of Mutable Instruments grids that just kind of shrinks the size because the original grids is really large, and I didn't want to dedicate that much space to it. But this will drive 3 different modules. It's a sequencer. It'll drive 3 different rhythmic or percussive sounds. And it's got kind of a bank of pre-programmed sort of patterns, but it's not just like you press a button and get an off-the-shelf pattern out of a list. It's much more interesting than that. If you think of, you can kind of think of it as like a map or like a spreadsheet, I guess, where you've got an x-axis and a y-axis. I guess you don't really see those exactly, but you think of like a square where there's like a vertical and a horizontal axis, and each cell, like each point of X and Y, represents a different pre-programmed pattern. That's kind of how grids' patterns are laid out. And the reason why it's interesting to have it in XY versus just a flat list is that you can morph between the different patterns in either direction. So you can modulate the position of the x-axis smoothly, or I guess that's the y-axis and the x-axis, and each kind of change in between those 2 points varies the pattern slightly while keeping the essence of the point it came from, which is really, really cool. And then you can change the probability of the individual channels triggering. So without me just talking too much, let's actually patch this up and I'll show you the way that I usually use it. So as I said, it's got 3 channels, and let me get some cables. So let's do out of channel 1, and then I put my drums right next to it. So I've got Crater, which is a dedicated kick drum module from WMD. And then this next one over here is Fracture, which is a sort of a clap generator, essentially, also from WMD. And then I don't have a third drum next to it. I kind of change up what I use for this. But I do have, for decent hi-hat sounds, Timpleggio from Noise Engineering, which is this lower module. I guess I could have used the short cable there. Let's see if this will reach. Bit of a stretch, but that's probably okay. There we go. If I go under, that works. And let's get the audio output of each of those into the mixer. I probably should have patched up the mixer before the stream. I don't think it's cheating to have that done. Okay, let's do kick drum into channel 1. And then the clap is actually stereo, so I need another cable. Fracture into left and right, channel 2. And then, will this reach? Oh, this is stereo also. Get slightly longer cables. So left and right out of Timpleggio into channel 3. And then we need, last but not least, our connection to the output module so we can actually hear this. So mixer left out into output left out, and the same for the right. Okay, so if I turn the clock on, hopefully we'll hear something if I unmute the channels. All right, so this top right knob is the tempo, controls the clock. I think if I set it at noon, that's about 120 BPM. How's that volume compared to my voice? It sounds a little quiet to me, but I may not be hearing exactly what you all are hearing. Let me turn up my own headphones. Yeah, I may need to turn up the drums a little bit. Okay, so I just have it set at a random position here. This middle knob on the left and the bottom knob on the left control the X and the Y position in that grid, respectively. So I put them all on X. So every time I change either the X or the Y, it'll change the pattern. Sounds okay. Oh, hey, Mildew. Good to see you. Thanks for stopping by. Breeze is here. Hey, Breeze. Good to see you again. Very much appreciate you stopping by. We're just messing around with grids a bit. So in addition to giving you these pre-programmed patterns, the other thing that grids lets you do is affect the probability that each of the 3 channels will actually trigger. If I turn these 3 knobs, so it's like channel 1, 2, 3 on the right. If I turn these knobs all the way to the right, they'll pretty much trigger constantly with like 16th notes. And the idea is that like this is the fully fleshed out pattern, and as you dial these back, it starts to remove triggers from the pattern for each of the respective channels. And so you can sort of control the trigger density of each of the 3 instruments in addition to what pattern is playing. Drums are quiet. I mean, yeah, they sound quiet to me. I'm going to turn them up a little bit. That's a little easier for me to hear, too. Maybe a little more, even. Okay, let's mess with the sounds a little bit, because we're going to be listening to this for a while. I want it to be something that doesn't get annoying. Also, I noticed we're not getting anything from Timplegio. Why is that? Why do I not hear anything? I'm certainly plugged in. Oh, I think it's because I had it in. Oh, that was right. Maybe it's just really quiet. Oh, I had the decay all the way down, so it was so short you could barely hear it. Yeah, Fracture is stereo. I think that's mostly... I mean, I guess, yeah, so the top right control on Fracture is spread. Let me mute the other ones for a second. And turn off the reverb. So if I turn spread all the way to the left, let's get more of a clap-like sound. Yeah, it's kind of a clap-like sound. Yeah. So you can hear it's mono, and then as you turn spread clockwise, it widens the image. So that's at noon. Three o'clock, and then all the way, I guess, about 5 o'clock. So depending on what you want, you can dial that in. I think I usually use it kind of with the most stereo spread. I guess I'm not so adventurous when it comes to snare sounds. I guess it's kind of ironic that I use these mostly in a fire and forget way, even though in modular, obviously, you can modulate all of this stuff as it's playing. I'd really actually like to explore that more. All right, so here's a basic drum beat. So you can change the pre-programmed pattern, you can change the density of notes. I think usually what I like is to have kind of a middle amount of snare. Usually you get kind of a backbeat, the standard thing if you have the snare at about noon. Keep in mind also, of course, that you can patch these 3 channels to anything you want. Like, it's kind of designed for patterns that make sense for kick, clap, or hat, and then, or sorry, clap or snare, and then a hat. But you can patch them to anything, even melodic sounds if you wanted to. So yeah, I usually like the snare a little bit more frequent. And then the kick, really you can dial it into taste. Let's try a different pattern. Kind of like that first one we had the best. Needs a good amount of syncopation, I think, to be interesting. There we go, that's not bad. So yeah, I think that's kind of good. And then this top left knob is called Chaos, and that will inject some sort of variance into the pattern, sort of as though you were modulating X and Y. So right now it's gonna, every time it repeats, it's gonna be exactly the same. But if I turn up the Chaos, it'll vary on each repeat. So you can hear there's kind of some extra kind of ghost notes thrown in there, and the hits are just different than they were with the Chaos all the way down. So I think usually I will not have it all the way down, have it inject like a little bit of variance, but not too much. I think generally speaking, it's important in music to have like clearly identifiable repetitions. Because if you just have a constant stream of randomness, there's nothing for your kind of ear to latch onto. It's sort of a weird metaphor, but I guess maybe you know what I mean. It doesn't really sound like music if you don't have something that's identifiable that repeats. And so I think like increasing the chaos during sort of like a build-up or a breakdown or something like a transition makes sense, but I wouldn't generally leave it really high during kind of like the main beat. Amelophile, welcome to the stream. How does the DivKit Oct work with the expander? Is there cable between them? Yes, there is. This is actually one of the harder, believe it or not, this is one of the harder modules to fit in my case, because it's got each of the Oct and the expander both have a power cable, and then there's another cable that just a normal ribbon cable that connects the two of them, and the three of them all there together. And if I recall, it's actually on the deeper side, like deeper than you might think. So it's kind of hard to fit all of that cable in there. I should probably get some like custom length cables that are a little shorter so that there's not so much like cable slack being all crammed in there. But yeah, clearly Oct was designed with the expander in mind, because that's why it had that expansion port from the beginning. Breeze, you have Crater, never modulated its parameters. Yes, that's funny. I have exactly the same experience and opinion that you do. That I was really, actually, when I was first building this case, let me turn this down a bit so we're not hearing the same thing forever while I'm talking. Well, I was first building this case and I was designing it around drums. I really liked the sound that I heard of the examples of the WMD drum modules, and the main thing that they didn't have was like a hi-hat dedicated module. There's a few others that you could use for that purpose. Like they've got Chimera and what am I forgetting? A Crucible, which are kind of both sort of things that could be used for hats. They weren't really intended for that. The thing I like about this, and Crater especially, is that It's like physical modeling, essentially, that it's like you're creating these sounds out of synthesis. And when I was building this, they had announced, I forget what it's called, their new hi-hat module. And they were announcing that it was going to be like a sample-based thing. And I'm not big on samples in general, and I was hoping that they would have like an analog hi-hat engine where you were constructing cymbals out of, or hi-hats out of synthesis techniques. But it ended up being like essentially a glorified sample player, which is fine. I mean, I don't really mean to dismiss it if it fulfills a use case for people. It does look very deep in terms of like the amount of customization and functionality it has, but just wasn't really what I wanted. So I ended up getting Timplegio to do hi-hats, and with the added benefit that this is one of Noise Engineering's platform modules, so you can swap this out for other firmware. So if I'm not always using it for hats or whatever else, I can do something else with the Legio module. I sometimes also do hi-hats by using the white noise out of Kinks, which I have to switch back to my left case. You'll see this in my video next week where I'm deep diving into Kinks, but it's got a sample and hold circuit at the bottom where it gives you access to the white noise that it's random source by default. And if you just take white noise and shape it with a amp envelope and like a filter, you can make hi-hat sounds out of just noise. That's a pretty standard synthesis technique. So I actually use that for hi-hats pretty frequently. Yes, the cables that connect the expander come with the expander. So if you just get Oct, it will just have a power cable. If you get the expander, it'll have a power cable and the cable that connects to the main unit. Sky, hello, welcome to the stream. Thanks for checking it out. How much does it cost? How much does what cost? The Oct or one of the drum modules? The problem I have with samples, like as a workflow, is that I feel like I don't really enjoy the process of like listening to a zillion different sounds that are already created to try to decide which one to use, like that sort of curation step that's necessary for working with samples. And if I'm starting from, I think it's also a little overwhelming in the same way that the like blank slate problem of like, what do I do when I have nothing started? Like I just get overwhelmed. Like how could I ever decide what to use when there's an infinite number of samples in the world? I think with synthesis, you're sort of constrained with the amount of choice that you have. So like, especially with modular, like you have a very clear set of controls and it's just like, okay, you've got these 3 switches and these 6 knobs, dial in a sound and that's going to be, your kick drum or whatever. That's a much more appealing workflow to me. And I feel like if you're making your own samples, then you're going to have to do that part of it anyway. So why not just use the sound directly instead of doing all of that work and then sampling it, and then maybe later discovering when you have it mixed in with other things that it doesn't sound quite the way you'd want with the other things, and you have to go back to the drawing board and resample with different settings. It's just like, it's a lot of extra process. And so I think that's the reason why I tend not to work with samples as much. But I am making it like a concerted effort to try to get better at that. So I've been working, I do have a Digitact, the Electron sample player. I'm working on a track where my buddy sent me a guitar riff that he played for one of his songs. And I'm trying to kind of get better at my sample workflow and make something out of that. But I find it pretty difficult, to be honest. Which is interesting because I think most people are more into samples than they are into synthesis. But maybe that just because it's easier if you're kind of using prepackaged stuff. I don't know. Everyone's different. Metalotron by Skull and Circuits. Oh, interesting. I have not heard of that. I'll have to check it out. Yeah, nature samples. That's it's funny. I have this little, I have this Tascam recorder that I use for field recordings, and I couldn't find this for like 6 months, and I just found it this past week. I discovered that I'd put it in my guitar case when I was traveling, And I forgot that I put it in there. It's like I never would have thought to bring it, but it was like I wanted to bring my guitar to play for some people. But then I was thinking, oh, maybe while I'm traveling, I'll do some field recordings. And I didn't. But then I also forgot that I brought this. But yeah, this is what I use for field recordings. I should really use it more. I only have maybe 2 or 3 tracks where I've done this. One of the most fun things I did with this, actually related to percussion, is I went around my house and just tapped random surfaces with my fingernail, or would hit a metal spoon against the counter or something. And I made a track where all of the percussion was just from household items. It's pretty fun. It's from maybe about 2 years ago. If you look on my channel, it's called Shaken and Stirred. If you want to see how that ended up. Okay, let's do something interesting with the drums. And the other thing that I think is adds a lot of depth to percussive stuff is distortion. So I've got Ruina Versio from Noise Engineering, which is their Versio distortion module. I wonder if maybe we set this up as a send effect, and then we can blend in distortion for each of the sounds. That might be kind of interesting to try. The problem with Versio is like I end up switching the firmware so often. I mean, really all of these platform modules from Noise Engineering, you buy one of them and then there's like a whole bunch of different essentially modules that you can flash onto there with a USB cable and some software on the computer. And I end up changing them a lot because I try to use different ones in each patch. And then I don't remember them that well when I come back to them. I'm like, I'd never become an expert in any of them because I don't spend a lot of time with the same module before changing. But I guess that kind of keeps it exciting. It kind of always feels like it's something new. Okay, so let's patch up some distortion. Let's see. Are these cables going to be long enough? All right, so we're going to come out of the stereo send from my mixer into the left and right inputs. And then back out of the outputs. Into the send return. Let's turn that on. I'm going to turn blend all the way to the clockwise position for maximum blend. You don't know what to say, you're just in awe. Oh, wow. I hope that's good. Okay, so now if I send... let's actually let's turn off all of them and just listen to one sound. So here's our clap. And I can start sending some of this to the distortion. You hear how that's thickening it up? It's hard to say. Thickening it up. Giving it some fuzz. And then we've got lots of sound shaping possibilities over on the distortion itself. Let me switch to the right camera so we can look a little closer. Yeah, it's a little hard to see, especially with these cables. Maybe I should use longer cables here so that it doesn't cover the... I don't know, you'll have to let me know how well you can see this. I guess if you can't read the text, it doesn't matter that much. But Ruina has a lot of controls for changing the flavor of your distortion. So I'm going to put everything in kind of a default position before we start to shape. So I think I'm actually just going to turn up the send all the way on this clap. So this is kind of like, essentially we're hearing 50% wet, 50% dry. And then let's mess with this and see what we can get. So this bottom right knob is called Octavize. I think this adds distortion that's roughly like an octave lower than the fundamental of whatever you're sending in. kind of gives it a little thud. Maybe not super impressive by itself. Drive. That also doesn't have a huge effect by itself. I think I might need to change to one of these other modes. To be totally honest, I don't even remember what this control does. There's a 3-way toggle switch with the choices are under, cross, and over. I think it has to do with like the order of the circuit, essentially, like whether fold goes into drive or drive goes into fold or something like that. It's kind of like the order of what processes what. I think we need to add some folding to really hear much distortion. Yeah, that seems to be the most pronounced timbral change, is to bring up that fold. You can really hear the effect of drive once the fold is turned up. Here's drive all the way off. And then at noon. And then all the way. So it kind of changes the range that you hear. It's almost like a filter. The phase control, I think, will kind of change like stereo panning. Not panning exactly, but it's just like to what degree the distortion is offset between the right and left channels. So I'm hearing that when I turn the phase counterclockwise, I hear it a little bit more prominently in the right channel, and vice versa. So here I'm turning it all the way left, and then all the way right. It's kind of subtle. I think maybe when you have more wild settings. And then center will change. It's kind of like a filter, but it's like the what position the distortion is centered around on the frequency spectrum. So generally this should have kind of a filtering type effect. Let's turn the fold like up way all the way so we kind of get the maximum amount of fuzz. It's actually more subtle than I was expecting. I guess also with these slow sounds, maybe what I should do is increase the decay. Yeah, maybe a little less dense so we get a little of the kind of weird trail of the clap. Like you can hear the sort of particles that the clap is made up of as you decrease the density control on fracture. You hear how it kind of like sounds like you're spilling a bunch of seeds or something. That was a weird example. I don't know how my brain came up with that. Who spills seeds? I don't know, something about that. Those little crinkles make me think of like sunflower seeds hitting a table or something. Oh, interesting. So I just switched the 3-way toggle switch to the over mode. That's much more distorted. Have I learned how to do this? I mean, I guess so. Just takes a lot of practice. A lot of experimentation. A lot of reading manuals. Watching videos and reading. Let's bring the other, at least the kick back in so we're listening to something a little more interesting while we mess with sounds. Oh yeah, that octavize adds a lot of oomph. Let's distort the kick a little bit too. Oh, that's really effective. Like so I turned the distortion all the way up on the snare to get this sound. That's like at 100% send. But on the kick, I'm only at 15%, and we've already got that much timbral change from distortion. Let's hear what it sounds like when I really crank it up. So it really affects the sort of pitch envelope that a kick drum sound is made from. You know, it's funny, I was kind of expecting that as I turned it all the way up to max, it would get kind of like painful to listen to, but it doesn't really get louder per se, it just gets kind of more wobbly. It's like very kind of like liquid sounding. But I kind of like it at just a small amount of distortion on this, so you don't get quite so much of that liquid sound. Yeah, so turning up the octavize really messes with it. Oh yeah, I mean, doing this kind of stuff in modular is a very different experience than working in a DAW. But I find it to be a lot more fun. I guess because I'm old enough that I came from an era when not all of music was just done in software. And so having the physical stuff is part of the fun for me. I think that's true for most people that are into any sort of hardware music making. For some people, they just feel like, oh, I spend all day at my computer for work, and the last thing I want to do for fun is just sit at the computer longer. And I will not claim at all that this is a better or easier way of making music. I don't think that's the point. This would all be much easier to do with VSTs. But it's whatever's fun for you, whatever unlocks your creative energies. And for me, this does it. Modular is like a new patch every time you switch it on. Yes, I agree. I mean, that can also be frustrating though. Like for me, I try when I'm doing a patch that I want to turn into a performance video, I almost always do it in one single sitting, which means that it takes the whole day. It's like it takes a really long time. Because if you turn the power to these things off, and then you turn them back on, even with all the knobs and stuff in the same positions, I find that certain things can get reset or changed in a way that's hard to reproduce what you had before. So once in a while, if I have to go until the next day, I'll just leave stuff on overnight, which feels like kind of a waste of energy, but I don't do it too often. I actually don't really know how much energy this takes, whether it's anything significant. But that is one kind of annoying thing about it, is you can't just like kind of snapshot where you are and load it like a file. I mean, with digital modules, I guess you can, but it's not an easy thing to do with a big setup like this. Okay, there's also this control called Doom. Actually doesn't make much of an effect in this case. I can't remember what Doom does. I mean, obviously it's like a prominent effect because the graphics indicate that. I think it's maybe more audible and non-percussive sounds or something. I can't remember what function it actually has. Let's bring the hi-hats back in. And let's give the hi-hat some distortion. Yeah, it's interesting. The distortion really brings out sort of the pitched elements of the percussion in a way. Like it's adding some resonance to a particular kind of frequency in the hi-hat, and then as the hi-hat modulates, you kind of hear the motion of that pitch change. Oh, Sky, I understand. Well, unfortunately, I don't know Russian, so I can't help much there. But yeah, please just keep asking questions. I'll do my best to explain. And if need be, you can always rewatch this to kind of translate more of it. Let's see if Doom affects this hi-hat sound. Kind kind of just smears it, I guess. There's also a button called Smoosh, and if you press that, I think it kind of maxes out all the settings. That's pretty obnoxious. But maybe triggering it rhythmically might be interesting. Yeah, so now this is changing the drive. I'm kind of surprised that changing the drive control really changes kind of the... It seems more like a filter to me, or an EQ, because it doesn't change just like... Like, it seems to correlate pretty strongly with, like, the frequency range. Like, as I turn the drive lower, I get lower frequency distortion. And the same if I turn it to the right, I get higher stuff. So maybe I'm misremembering what drive does. I would expect it to just be kind of like the intensity of the distortion. But it kind of seems more like similar to the center control. Yeah, sorry about that. Let me turn the volume down a little bit now that I've got more noise on this thing. I kind of like this like low frequency distortion actually. Try some of the other modes. So I've been in over mode. Let's try under mode. So this again like reroutes the controls through each other. That's a much milder sound. And then the cross, I think it's just basically a third combination of ordering of the internal components. This is a little bit of a downside of the Ruina interfaces. I feel like this is very hard to kind of intuit what it's doing without just reading the manual. We definitely get the wildest distortion from the over mode. Should we start getting some modulation on this? Force Juso. I hope I'm saying that right. Welcome to the stream. Just started building my first Euro rack just for ambient and dark drone. For modulation, would you get PAM or Oct? Man, that's a hard one. I think if you could only get one of the two, I would say Pamela's Pro Workout is... let me go back to my big camera. So Oct is right here. This black one with all the gold jacks. And Pamela's Pro Workout over here on the far left with the yellow button and the blue knob. I would get PAM. I think this is kind of an essential Euro rack module. I think it's probably in the top 10, if not the top 5, if not the top 3 most popular Euro rack modules, just because it's so flexible. It can do basically you can do you can do everything with it. In fact, I actually did a video a couple of years ago called like the amazing versatility of Pamela's Pro Workout, something like that, which you can find on my channel. I did a deep dive into this guy to really, or I guess this gal, I should say, Pamela, to really explore like how versatile it is, that it's not just giving you triggers at multiplications and divisions of the beat. It's doing envelopes, it's doing LFOs, it's doing pitch sequencing. It's really, really versatile. So you can do, I mean, Oct is kind of different in that it's giving you, if you're talking about just the main module, it's 8 triangle wave LFOs that are in they're in speeds that you can control with a single knob turn, but the sort of way that they vary in relation to each other is fixed. That's like part of the design of the module, is to make sure that the relationships between these different LFOs are not synced to an obvious clock. And so the result is that you get sort of meandering, organic sounding modulation. It's great because it's just so easy. Like, it's 8 modulation sources that you can just dial in with a single cable. You might need an external attenuator depending on what you're patching it into, but it's kind of a fire and forget sort of thing. Like, it doesn't require a lot of thought to get some really interesting movement going. And because of the fact that they're unsynced, it tends to sound very organic and interesting. The downside is that you don't have that much control. You don't have that much flexibility. Like, that's all it does. There's some tricks you can do by modulating the rate change with CV. Ben, who created this for Instruo, you know him on YouTube as DivKid. He actually just did a video recently, like in the last week, where he was kind of showing some examples of using negative CV to freeze the LFOs. If you send a fully like a strong negative signal into the CV input, it will slow the LFO down to the point where it stops moving, and you can use it sort of like a sample and hold, or I guess track and hold maybe is a better way to say it. Anyway, there's some interesting tricks you can do with it, but mostly I think it's just useful for that kind of organic, natural modulation. If you're doing like drones and stuff, then actually Oct is useful, because that's kind of what you want with a drone, is just like that sort of organic, not clocked, not identifiable modulation. So you'll get a lot of benefit from both, but I think that if you had to pick one, PAM can do a decent amount of what Oct can do, in terms of like, you could have 8 LFOs from PAM because it's got 8 outputs. You wouldn't be able to sort of detune them quite as easily as the way that, you know, Oct is very, very intentionally designed. Because the way that PAM works is by setting these things at a rate related to the BPM. So you'd have to do some tricks with offsets and weird things to get something similar to what Oct does. But if you just want 8 modulation sources and you're not so concerned with whether they're synced or not, then PAM will also do that fine, plus all the other things that it does. Sky's asking, can you play any track and edit it? Not really, because I'm not recording anything. This is all just analog audio being sent to my audio interface. So if I want to record, there are multi-track recorders that you can get where it has like, you know, one output per instrument essentially, or per voice. I don't do that. I just record stereo mixes because I kind of like the raw performance aspect of modular. And then in terms of editing stuff, I assume you mean like editing like you would in software. Not really, but I would need a more specific use case to say more. I think I really think, I mean, you can obviously use modular in more of a studio setting, but I tend to use it as more of a performance thing. So it's like creating my own groove box, building something that kind of creates a good groove, and then recording a stereo mix. And I mostly don't do a lot of post-processing. Sorry, just checking in on the chat. Let me know if the drum beat is getting annoying. I can turn it off while we're talking. Yes, Pamela's Pro Workout can also drive your pitch sequences. That's exactly right, because it does have. You can generate either a stepped or a smooth random voltage, and it has a built-in quantizer, so you can snap those pitches to the 12-tone scale, send it to the volt per octave of any oscillator, and you've got a pitch sequence that will sound good. So yeah, it's incredible. You can really drive your entire patch with just PAM. Breeze, Breeze, you don't have Oct? That's surprising. I feel like I guess I shouldn't be surprised, because there are just so many modules that even ones that are generally kind of super popular doesn't mean everyone has them. Like, I don't have Make Noise Maths, which everyone says is like one of the first modules you should get. Orbit 3. I assume, is Orbit 3 Jor Analog? I'm guessing by the naming scheme. Oh, thanks for stopping by, Mellophile. Appreciate it. Yeah, that's a good way of saying it. PAM and Oct are complementary. So if the difference between sync and not synced matters to you, then that's how you would make the decision. But it's great to have both, for sure. I hope I didn't miss any questions. I don't think so. Okay, what was I doing? I guess we were just kind of messing with the distortion. Oh, I think I was going to start modulating. Well, we're doing something rhythmic, so I feel like a tempo-based modulation makes sense. Sync matters, yeah. I mean, it depends. It really does depend. I think if you hear some examples of how to use Oct, where the kind of changes are just flowing in and out, and you can kind of get just lost in like a drone or something like that, having it unsynced actually makes a big difference there. The fact that the LFOs are tuned in the way they are, I think is very intentional. Never got a reply for your inquiry on Oct. What did you ask? Let me see what I missed. I'm getting enough chat now that I need to scroll back, and unfortunately my mouse is pretty far away. Let me scroll back and look at your question real quick. I wonder if it got filtered? I'm sorry, I'm not seeing a question about Oct that I missed. Sorry, please ask again. I'll try to catch it before it disappears. Should we do some synced modulation? Let's see. Okay, so right now I'm using the internal clock on grids, which is controlled by this top right knob. If I turn it all the way to the left, it's going to turn it off, and it's going to start listening to the clock and reset inputs on the top left. So let's drive it from PAM. I mean, this is a little annoying for video purposes because the two modules are not near each other. So I can't zoom in a way that you can see both of them. Oh, never got a reply from DivKid. What did you ask him? Let's see, do I have a cable that is long enough for this nonsense? Because this is pretty far away. My long cables might not even be long enough. I need to get out my really long cable. Oh yeah, this will work. Okay, so I think... So I'm going to patch this into the clock input, and then there's a stop, very handy. I have the Pamela's Pro Workout Expander also. Let me switch to the left case. Maybe a little hard to see on camera, but PAM is just the first 4 jacks width, and then there's a separate module here called PPXP1, which is an expander for Pamela's Pro Workout. Which adds, like, all of the outputs on the main PAM unit are configurable, so you control what's coming out of these jacks. On the expander, there's, like, some fixed multiplications and divisions and utilities that are just kind of handy because they're commonly used. So you get, like, a 1x, 2x, 4x, and those are always those things. Like, they don't change. They're not configurable. But one thing that's nice about it, it has this stop output. So you can send that to something like a reset on another module, and it'll reset the other module's sort of sync point whenever you stop, so that when you start again, you're starting from the beginning of a pattern. Oh, send me free stuff. Yeah. So Breeze, do you get sent stuff from modular manufacturers to review? I've been thinking about trying to do that. I'm not sure my channel is popular enough that anyone would want to send me anything, but I'm kind of getting there. So especially once I have more of those kind of deep module review videos, I think I can make a pretty good case that it is worth me doing them in exchange for some gear. I don't really like getting gear for the sake of gear. I mean, it's fun, but I don't necessarily want to be like getting something new every week or even every month. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, so now with this patched in, I think for the first, I think Grids is expecting a 24x clock. So I'm going to change the multiplication on this first output to times 24, and that should sync Grids to whatever tempo I've set on PAM. So if I press the start button, we should hear what we heard before. I might need to stop it to reset. Yep. So now we can control the tempo from here, which is actually a little easier because you have the digital display. On Grids, you just have that analog knob with no labeling, so it's, unless you're very good at counting or you have a metronome or something, it's hard to tell what exact tempo you've set. I think distorted drums needs to be faster rather than slower. 130, I'm just picking a random, 132. Okay, there. So now we've got Pam driving grids. Oh, thanks, Mildew. I appreciated your comments on Reddit, if I'm remembering correctly, saying that this was useful for you. I'm sorry I'm not getting the right time slot so that you can see all of it, but I really do appreciate you stopping by. I'm so glad that it's useful. If you watch the rest later, hopefully I will do something that will be useful still. Okay, let's get some modulation going from this, some synced modulation. So maybe on... Let's just do a one. I guess I can, while we're just playing around here, I can. Oh, I guess these are just triggers. Let's do like a divided by 2 clock on the second output, and then let's change the shape. I don't know how well you can see this on the screen, but by default, the trigger pattern that's sent out of an output is just like a binary on-off, so it sends us like, it's like a gate or a trigger, sends a maximum voltage and then back down to 0, but you can change the shape of what it's outputting. So if I change it to something like this, like a triangle, now I've got a triangle LFO, and you can maybe see that that second jack is now glowing in a sort of a smooth pattern as opposed to just blinking with the beat. That's because it's sending a triangle wave out now. Okay, so let's send, we might need to attenuate this, but let's send this to a distortion parameter. What should we pick? I think maybe the drive had the most change. I put the drive knob all the way down. It's maybe a little fast to hear the difference. Oh, I have the fold all the way down, that's why. There we go. So you can really hear that sort of slippy, smooth sound. Let's try making the LFO slower. That's a divided by 2.6 modifier, so it's going to be not perfectly synced with the downbeat. Let's just try something more synced. Let me start it over. Yeah, thanks for the suggestion, Breeze. I think I will. I mean, I feel like modular is kind of a niche thing anyway, although obviously big enough to sustain this little cottage industry. But yeah, I think I could be valuable in doing module reviews and stuff. Yeah, that sounds pretty cool. We can also change the shape of this, so it's not just a triangle, but maybe kind of just like a trapezoid sort of shape. I don't know if the Versio takes negative voltage on... Let's see. I think the Versio modules only take positive voltages on their inputs. I could be wrong. Let's try... Oh, this is kind of cool. Kind of like an envelope with an instant attack, and then kind of a logarithmic decay. So that also almost gives it like... it's almost like a different instrument is sequenced on a particular place in the pattern, rather than like a kind of a slow change. And then this, we can also change the width on it, so it kind of changes how quickly it decays. It may not be audible because it's so fast. Yeah, it gives a little more of that sort of laser gun sound. maybe width is not super audible on that wave shape. Oh, that's cool. So same idea, but with like a logarithmic decay. Or actually, I guess that's more exponential, depending on how you're thinking about the release time. So let's modulate something else. We've got to start to mix these up to get it really interesting. What else makes a big change in the sound? I guess octavize? Let's stick that into the third one. Octavize. Oh, that's cool. So this one, let me start with a faster modulation. So I've set that to 2.6x, and we need to give it a different shape. Let's start with the triangle. That's cool. It's kind of doing a little rumble. How often do I stream live? This is kind of a new thing for me, but I have been doing it every week. I think this is the 4th time, maybe the 5th time. And I had been doing them on Friday afternoons, 1 o'clock my time, which is Pacific on the west coast of the United States. But at least in the US, people are still at work at that time. So I wanted to, I found that I was mostly hitting people that were having their evenings in Europe on Fridays. So I decided to do it on Saturday this week since I was available, and give people who are working on Fridays a chance to attend. So I might shift the time around, but so far I've been doing about once a week and aim to keep that up as long as it is useful and interesting for folks. Let's change the width on this, maybe? Just offset it a little bit. And what other interesting... I think we might want to attenuate the strength of this LFO also. And it's really cool that you can do all of this from from Pamela's Pro Workout. So normally you would need to, run that through a separate attenuator, but you can just attenuate the signal directly from the menu. Now I will say that even though Pam is really popular, and I was a little worried when I was thinking about getting it, just the idea of spending so much time on this little screen with just a button and two buttons and one knob. But it's very intuitive, and I don't find that it's like annoying. Like there's kind of a meme of like, oh yeah, people like using modular to get away from the screen, but then they end up just looking at smaller, less useful screens. So I was definitely conscious of that when I was thinking about this. But it hasn't been a problem. I think it's so intuitive that it's quick to dial things in. Saturday is perfect. Yeah, I suspect more people will be available. At least, since I'm in the U.S., I assume my audience is mostly also in North America, and so I'm probably better at overlapping. But it's also my weekend, so can't do it at this time every week, I don't think. All right, we'll see how it goes. I think varying it is probably the best way so that different people get an opportunity to attend live. And of course, if people really like this stuff, they can always watch the recording. But personally, I think a lot of the value is to be able to sort of discuss in real time and direct where the flow of things go. All right, what else? Maybe we should modulate some of the instruments themselves and not just the distortion. Because, we've got all these patch points on our drums. Let me go back to the right case, or I guess the overhead. So we're using Crater for the kick, Fracture for the snare or the clap sound, and Timpleggio for the hi-hat. Let's do like a random modulation. So we go back to Pam, we'll go to the 4th output, and I'm going to set it to 4x. so like 16th notes. And let's set this shape to be stepped random modulation. So on every 16th note pulse, it's going to send out a different completely random voltage out of that fourth output. And let's use that to modulate, I don't know, let's just try a few things. Maybe our hi-hat decay. Or maybe some of its own modulation. It's got this control called wackitude, which has a few different modes. Let me turn off the other drums for a second so I can really hear it. So this is more audible when the decay is longer. And it's got it's got a toggle switch for 3 different modes of what that wackitude control does. Well, that's kind of cool. It's not a hi-hat sound, but we're getting, I mean, with distortion and the drum beat, we're kind of getting into techno territory, so this gives us like a little bit of a sort of pseudo pitch sequence. This is cool. Step random modulation for the chaos or density. Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Because we are right now, I have a little bit of chaos going, but it's not much, but I could kind of amp it up. Oh, Ziptronic, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm glad that this is entertaining or useful or both. That is my goal. That's actually pretty damn cool. I like that. And this is a reminder to me because I so often with these drum modules, even though there's so much cool stuff that you can get from modular, I find myself kind of using them for sort of bread and butter sounds more often than not. And I'm always like, okay, what sounds most like a real hi-hat? And then this reminds me that like you can get such cool stuff by messing with things and using things in a less obvious way. Formanty, yeah, it does. It kind of sounds like a little robot talking to you. Okay, yeah, so let's use a random modulation for, I'm gonna just set number 5 to also be maybe let's do something, well, I'm not sure what yet. Well, let's leave it at 1x for the moment. And we're gonna set it to maybe a smooth modulation. Oh man, I gotta remember to change my camera when I'm talking about the right case. My bad. My monitor's off to like the right of the table that you're looking at, so I sometimes forget which camera I have zoomed in. Okay, let's take the 5th output that's giving us a a smooth modulation on the quarter note. And what should we try for this? Let's do something really obvious to start. I'm going to put it on the snare, the density of the snare. Oh, that is nuts. Running FL Studio right now, jamming. Oh man, that's cool. That's so cool. Wish there was a way I could get your audio into my rack and get some feedback going. Well, this is pretty nuts. I think this would need to be attenuated so it doesn't go quite so high. Let's put it at like 40%. That's maybe a little too low. Maybe 60? 55? I don't know. What do you all think? Is this the right destination? Maybe we should try. Let me try it on the hi-hat. That's cool. Let me bring this down. Maybe 35%. So we're giving a random voltage between like 0 and maybe 3.5 volts or something like that. Actually, I'm not sure what the scale is. I guess maybe it's 0 to 5. So this is like just a little bit of voltage range. And when it's higher, it's going to increase the frequency of triggers to the hi-hat. Or I guess our kind of robot sound. It's less of a... Yeah, I do need to get some decay modulation going for sure. Oh, I didn't mention that Grids also, in addition to its 3 outputs for the triggers, it has 3 accent outputs too. So the pre-programmed patterns are actually have a lot of detail because they have, you know, all of those different morphable patterns, each with its own sort of density probability controls per channel, but then there's also accented beats for extra velocity. Let's make some use of those. So I think, yeah, actually, both Crater and Fracture have accent inputs, which marries perfectly with this. So let's plug the accent of the kick into Crater's accent input. And then the same for the snare drum. So the snare drum, this is interesting because rather than an accent input, Fracture has 2 inputs. One's called trig and one's called tick. And then if they happen to both trigger at the same time, then you get an accent. So if I unplug the trig, so we have just tick. Oh, let me mute the other ones. That's what the tick sounds like. And then the trig is what we were listening to before. The real kind of clap sound. But if I plug both of them in, it may not be super obvious with all this distortion, but if both of these happen to trigger at the same time, it'll give an accented clap. So it's actually it's a very clever input system. So there's not a lot of control over like what the accent does in this case, but I think it's kind of interesting. Now for the third one, the third accent, there isn't like a equivalent of this control. There isn't a dedicated accent input on the Timpleggio. So it might not really do anything because it's going to give a short trigger, but that might not be long enough to really hear anything. Let me try just sticking it into pitch because that'll be the most audible. Let me actually take out the... Okay, there you go. I think with all this processing, it's a little hard to tell what its effect is. What about decay? I might need to send this into an envelope to give a control signal that lasts a little bit longer, because the trigger might be just so short that you can't really hear it when used as the modulation itself. Let's try this with an envelope, maybe. Stick this wackitude modulation back in. Yeah, maybe what we'll do is we'll use that accent output. Let's let me go to my full case. Let's take the trigger from the accent output. Let me see if this cable can reach. No, I think I'm gonna need a longer one. Yeah. needs me a long cable. Okay, so accent out of 3 into quadrax channel 1. Okay, so now if I zoom in on my left case, I just plugged in the accent output of channel 3 of grids into the first channel of quadrax. So you'll see that little light right above my finger will light up whenever it receives a trigger, and it'll generate an envelope. So let's send that envelope that it generates to the decay of Timpleggio. And then if we increase the fall time so that it actually lasts an audible amount of time, then there should be more change during those times. Yeah, that sounds more different than just giving it a tiny trigger that's over before you can hear anything. And how about we take another LFO from Pam to modulate the fall time of that? So, output number 6. I think we want another smooth random voltage here, maybe at 4x. Alright, I'm going to send that to CV input 1 on the envelope. So that's essentially like turning the fall time automatically without me having to touch anything. You know what we should really be doing here is using Desmodus for some reverb or delay on all of this. Because we've been processing it with distortion, which has given us something very different than what we started with. In fact, I can show you that if I just mute my send. That's our dry sound. So that's so much different than the distorted sound we're getting. All that character that Ruina is adding to our percussion. And of course I'm using this as a send, so we're also still hearing the dry sound. You could do it as an insert also, where you're running directly from the audio into a mixer, into Ruina, into, you know, your final mix, so that you don't hear any of the dry signal if you don't want to. It's a little harder to achieve because I would, well, not necessarily harder, but it would require an intermediary mixer, which I'm not really well set up for. I'd have to use either Quad VCA or Quadrat to do that mixing, and when you're doing something in stereo, that's kind of annoying because you have to duplicate left and right channels to get something that sounds centered, is essentially mono but centered. Anyway, we're not going to bother with that. But I do want to set up send B for Desmodus, which is the very popular reverb module from Noise Engineering. Also a Versio module, so you can run either Ruina or Desmodus or any of the other various Versio firmwares on any of these modules. I have 2 of each. I have 2 Elias, 1 Legio, 2 Versios, so I have a lot of mixing and matching I can do with the various platform firmwares. Okay, let's go out of... Is this long enough? Do I need a longer one? Let's do longer. Alright. Out of send B into Desmodus. And then out of Desmodus into our return B, return B. Let's unmute that, and let's maybe send the clap to it first. I've got everything pretty much at default. Let's get the regen up. Turning the density all the way to the right. It gives us more of a reverb sound as opposed to a delay. And increase the size of the tail. Let's give the hats, or pseudo hats, what began as hats, to the reverb. It's honestly not that audible. There we go. I have to really crank the regen to get good stuff out of Desmodus. It's too much, though. Yeah. I think that doesn't quite work with our input. I mean, that sounds pretty cool. That's with the size all the way down. Let's try turning the size up a little bit. And then there's a tone control to kind of make the reverb more audible in the higher frequencies or the lower ones. I think making it a little darker sounds better with this particular sound source. It's got an internal LFO, so you can modulate the time. Should give us some wackiness. Okay, just a little bit of space, not anything overwhelming. A lot of people use Desmodus for like really wild, like runaway sort of drone atmospheres. I don't think that's really appropriate for this input. I mean, we can turn it way up. We'll get some crazy stuff. But it just tends to feedback too much. If you turn the regen past 3 o'clock, then it's like infinite, but new input will cause the reverb to duck. But I still find it kind of overwhelming, usually. Unless you have like a really strong... Like if I send the kick drum to the reverb. Actually, that's kind of cool. Because now that loud kick drum is causing the ducking effect every time. So you can just kind of get this whooshing in and out reverb as it starts to build and then the next kick drum cuts it off. I actually don't hate that. That's kind of, it's rhythmic. That sounds actually maybe more cool than more of a standard reverb tail. I wouldn't normally send a kick drum to reverb, but I guess because of this behavior of the regen ducking on Desmodus and the fact that they don't even describe it as a reverb, they call it like a atmosphere generator or something. So I guess it kind of works for this case. That's pretty cool. Alright, what can we modulate? Maybe let's modulate the tone of the reverb to kind of swoop it a bit. So let me get a long cable. almost out of outputs on Pam. Okay, so output 7. Maybe do like a slower one, like divided by 3. And let's do maybe like this kind of hump wave. And let's send that to the tone. And this is going to need to be attenuated because we don't want it to go the full range of the tone knob. Well, actually, let's try that first. Okay, so I've got the tone manually set to all the way to the left, so it's like the lowest possible tone, like very dark. And then as this hump shape gets to its peak, it's going to essentially have turned the tone all the way up. I don't know that I necessarily want that much change. Like, you can really hear the sweep. That's okay. I think well, I'm going to turn the tone kind of like a quarter of the way up, and then reduce the level of the LFO maybe like 50%. So it's not going all the way up. Maybe 55? 60? That's cool. Yeah, that's a good amount of interest. Now, I will say that hi-hat pattern, I feel like I want that to change more. It's getting kind of annoying. So maybe let's modulate the actual pattern on grids as our last modulation from Oct. Alright, 8th output. What is this going to be? I think we want something pretty slow. Or maybe we want it fast, but... Actually, you know what? Maybe this is a case for Oct. Let's go to the right case, because I want something that's actually not tempo synced for this. I want it to be kind of organic. So let's take... let's take an LFO from Oct. Maybe one of the kind of middle position ones. And I'm going to send it into this right channel of the Lapsus Os, which is an attenuator. And let's give it the full strength initially. And let's send the LFO into one of the map controls, which is... Let's maybe do the Y position. So that's changing the pattern a lot. I mean, if I attenuate this, it'll be just a little bit of change on the map Y control. Compare to? Oh yeah. I did a video on Compare To pretty recently for like kind of mimicking or extracting gates to use for sidechain compression. Using it as a mono to stereo distortion. Yeah. Yes, I have read that guide, but I don't use it frequently enough that I think a lot of those techniques have really stuck in my head that I could recall them without reading it again. I should definitely spend more time with Compare To. I think I tend to use it in a kind of just mess around and see what you get way a lot of the time, and not so much with like intention of like I want to achieve a specific effect and I know exactly how I'm going to do it. But I feel like I could easily get to that with a little bit more time spent. I wish you could modulate the switch on the Timpleggio, because it's got this toggle switch for what this modulation knob does. It's called Wackitude or Tang. Kind of weird. But it's basically like a difference between... I guess it's kind of a wave folder, essentially. But it's got 3 different, like, I guess, algorithms for how it folds the wave. And I wish you could modulate the position of that switch, but there's no input for that. What we could do is maybe mix an LFO with the random signal that we're using. So let me actually, let's go back to the main case. So I'm going to unplug this stepped, I think it's stepped random that we were sending to that thing. And let's send that into a channel of Quadrat, just because so we can mix this. And then we'll take, let's see, do I have a long enough cable? I'm kind of running a low of long green cables. Will this reach? Sure will. Okay, let's take a unipolar LFO, and then send this in to the Wackitude. So what I'm doing now is I'm mixing together 2 CV signals. Maybe we should really visualize this, actually. Let me do that. Let's send it through data so we can see what we're doing here. This will help us understand exactly how we're affecting the sound. Okay, let's turn on... there we go. Maybe... let's get full height. So this is easy to see. This is a DC signal. Okay, so there we've got unipolar stepped random modulation on that green trace. And then separately, if I turn that all the way off and I bring in the LFO, that's the triangle wave that's coming from... I gotta put it lower because of the... Oops. Let's move the position down so we can see the tips. There we go. So that's an LFO. And so if we mix the two together... I'll turn the range down so we can see the whole thing. There we go. So we've got randomness that's following the curve of the LFO. So it tends to skew whether the random voltage it picks is in a lower or higher range over time. And then we can attenuate either of those values. So the less LFO we give it, the more close to the center the randomness will be. And the less randomness we give it, the less it'll vary from the sweep provided by the LFO. So I think what I want is like full randomness and maybe a little attenuation on the LFO. Not quite as much change as I would have liked. Maybe the thing to do here is actually modulate the pitch. You don't see the data screen? Oh, I guess... I think it's probably that there's just not enough resolution to see it clearly when I'm zoomed in on just half of the camera's resolution. Oh, that's unfortunate. Yeah, I can see on my monitor that it's not really very visible. Let me look at it directly. Oh yeah, that's pretty hard to see. I need to figure out if there's anything else I can do to get, I mean, not during this stream, but just in terms of my setup here. Like the overhead obviously gives you a very clear shot of everything, and these left and right ones are just digital zooms on a cropped section of the larger image. But that means that you're losing resolution as you zoom in. So I assume you can't see Data's screen even when I'm zoomed out, right? It still looks completely black. The camera would just need to be closer or have more resolution, which I may not be able to achieve with a single camera. Yellow trace, maybe? Yeah, let's try the yellow trace. Might have a little more contrast. How does this look? Can you see the yellow trace? I don't see it on my screen, so I suspect you can't see it. I think there's just not enough light or resolution. Esteros Live Project, welcome to the stream. Hello. Yeah, that's a shame. So this may be something I need to figure out how to improve on the stream, if possible. I can't really do two different cameras, one for each case. Maybe in the future, but yeah. Anyway, I think maybe my explanation was enough. If you have a little more familiarity with modular, then you should kind of understand what I'm saying. You're mixing two modulation signals to create a shape that kind of follows the path of both of them. So you're getting a squiggly line that's random from the sample and hold, and then a smooth triangle from the LFO, and then when you combine them, you get wiggles that follow the shape of the LFO. That's basically what's being shown on Data. So I think the last thing maybe to do with this is to do some pitch modulation of the hi-hat, because it's very repetitive, even though the timbre changes a bit. Let's use our last... Yeah, Data does not have a brightness control. No, I don't think it does. Does it? No. Data is like really, really useful, but there's a few things that really annoy me about it. That's one of them. Also, just like the fact that you can't change the colors, like those four colors, like the red trace is really bad. Like red on black is straight up not visible to people with color blindness. And even with unless you have a camera on it very close at high resolution, it's hard to see a red trace on a video. So I wish you could change the colors. I wish you could change the brightness. And then I wish also you could recall a specific state on power on. It's really annoying that you can't do that. Okay, let's send a long sequence. Okay, I'm out of green cable, so we are going. Oh wait, no wait, I can use one of these big thick boys. Okay, 8th channel of Pamela's Pro Workout. Let's send that into the pitch on Timp Legio. Oh, that's funny. We get kind of this weird chattering because it's... What is it sending out? It's sending out a 4x trigger. Let's change that to maybe sample and hold. Okay, cool. So now we've got changing pitches, but it's going too high. So we need to attenuate the range. So there's 10. Maybe I'll turn the bass pitch lower. And then I can turn the range up higher. Maybe we don't actually want this at 4x. Because you can kind of hear how there's a little bit of slew, where the pitch changes as a single hit is ringing out. We'll try it at 2x. It actually makes it less prominent. Let me attenuate this. I'm now forgetting, what did we plug this into? The wackitude? Okay. So I think it makes the harmonic a little less prominent. What do you guys think? If I unplug. Maybe I need to just start it off a little higher. Well, we've created something pretty fun here. Kind of noisy and wild. I haven't been using the Doom control. I really need to refresh myself on what this does. It's not as pronounced as I would expect for a name like that. I just realized I've only had the fold at 50% this whole time. Switching over to the under topology gives you some different timbres. You sampling this? Awesome. If you upload what you make anywhere, leave me a comment on the video so I can check out what you made with this. Should we add one more thing, like maybe just like a rhythmic bass note from another oscillator? I think that's like kind of the thing we're missing to really take this home. What should we use? Maybe good old trusty plates, or what do I have left oscillator? Oh, I guess Manis, actually. Right here. This bad boy. From also from Noise Engineering. This is like actually, this is perfect. Manis is like marketed as like an industrial voice. So, ooh, I'm out of random sources. So maybe what I'll do is, let's go to the left case for a minute. We've got, fortunately I have the PAMS expander, so I can take the 4x output and let's send the 4x output into the clock on marbles. And let's maybe do the 1x clock, but set it in 4x mode. I guess it doesn't really matter. Okay, so now we've got essentially extra sources that are of signal that are control signal that are synced to our tempo. So let's take what was I gonna do? Let's send a pitch sequence, or just I mean this has its own sort of pseudo quantizer in it, but I have an actual quantizer with Bard Quartet. So I'm gonna take random CV signals spanning two octaves of range, send that into the Bard Quartet, and Then let's take the output of the quantization into the pitch on Manis. And let's get our Manis sound source plugged in, or I guess we're going to need a trigger too. So let me take let's start with the T2 trigger. This is probably too fast. I'm going to trigger Manis. And we need to plug this in. This is probably too short. Alright, output of Manis into the 4th channel of the mixer. This is going to probably be annoying when I first turn it on. We'll change it up. Alright, we need something much lower in pitch. Let's go all the way to its bottom range. Maybe we'll trigger it. Yes, you're right. Mimetic will give me random. Kinks will give me random. I got lots of modulation sources. Okay, let's get a little bit of a longer envelope. Bring down the low-pass filter. It's got a built-in low-pass filter. And then this control that they call bash will apply the trigger envelope to 3 different controls. So it's a kind of like a built-in envelope attenuator. Oh, I realize I'm in the alto range. Bring in some of its crazy timbral modulation to really get that industrial voice. I guess we should distort this too, right? And send it to Desmodus? Maybe? Alright, I'm just playing one note right now, so let me... I think I probably need to slow the clock down here. Let me go to 1x instead of 4x. Maybe not. I think the problem here is that I want the trigger rate to maybe be different than the pitch change rate. Let's maybe use a slower rate of change for the pitch, and maybe we'll just let's just try triggering it on 8th notes to start. think a less distortion on the bass. Sorry if I was on the wrong camera for some of that. I think I was messing with marbles and you couldn't see. Well, as advertised, this definitely goes with our drums. This is industrial indeed. I'm kind of losing the kick in all this. Well, I mean, this is fun. I don't think it's like something I would record as a performance video, but this is kind of what I was talking about at the beginning of the stream, is like when you're messing around like with this and you're just kind of exploring, you don't know what you're going to get, and what you get may not be something that you want to share as a song. It doesn't quite work, or it needs a lot more tweaking, so it can take a long time to go from nothing to something that's really worthwhile. Like, I feel like I want more of a kick. You know what we could do is we could add another kick from Dissimulus on top of all of this. Let me take a molt of my marbles clock. So we're going to unplug this guy. Oops. Plug it into a molt. And then back into the clock of marbles. And then we're going to send that same quarter note pulse to the trigger on Dissimulus. And then Dissimulus audio into the mixer. Okay. Need to turn down. Yeah, let me turn down some of this other stuff and try to get the levels a little bit better. Let's turn this off for a second. Let's get a good sound on our kick drum from Dissimulus, something real bassy. More punch. Yeah, I feel like I need more drive, man. Problem with I want it real bassy. You know what? Let's send it to blades, because I can use that to drive the input and saturate it more. So let's go out of Bassimilus into channel 1 of blades. Out of blades. Is this cable gonna reach? Yeah. Oh, it's close. Into channel 5. And then I can use this. Let's see. I'm going to go high pass. There we go. There we go. That gives us a bit more punch. Okay, let's bring back in our other instruments. I mean, I don't know. I don't love this. It's definitely messy. This is very much in the sort of experimentation phase, but you have to really sort of start to sculpt this and add more intention to the parts that aren't working so well. I mean, if your goal is to scare your parents away and make them cry to their church, to their school, that their child is worshiping the devil, then I think you will achieve that with this. Lots of blinking lights and wires and annoying noises, sure to scare away any parent. Some of the Bassimilus kick drum to the distortion. You know, what I was saying earlier about random sequences is that it needs to have some repetition. So I think what I might do is actually pull this out of Barred Quartet. And we're just going to use, we're going to use the X output from Marbles directly for the pitch. I'm going to use its own quantization. And then we're going to lock in like an 8-step pitch pattern. Yeah, good point. We do need to get some sidechain on this. So let's take, let's see, how are we going to do sidechain? I think maybe we'll kind of fake it with an envelope. No, we're going to use the envelope output of Messer. So I'm going to take the kick drum's output, the big kick drum, which is this guy. Let's send this into a molt. And then one copy is going to go... Ugh. One of those days you just can't plug the jack in. One's going to go straight in. And then I need a really long cable. Another molt is going to go into my Cosmotronic Mesor, which is a compressor. And then we're going to take the control signal. So this generates an envelope. Let's take that on a shorter cable. Alright, so we're going to not use this for audio, but we're sending a copy of the kick drum into the audio input of the compressor. And then we're extracting just the envelope signal, but not a compressed audio signal. And I'm going to send the envelope that it derived from the kick drum into the expander for the mixer. And this will allow me to create modulations. You won't be able to see the screen, but essentially you can program in modulations. So I can say on jack 1, we're going to add negative volume. So right now, yeah, we're gonna apply the incoming control signal at like 60% depth, maybe to start. So we're going to send that to channel 4. Oh, 60 is too much. Maybe 35 is enough. This is a little bit roundabout, but essentially the reason I did it this way is because I can't, I have one compressor, so I could send my stereo output into the compressor, but then it would also duck the kick, which we don't want. That's the reason I did it this way. So what I'm doing instead is extracting the envelope of the kick, as determined by the compressor, and using that to automate the volume of the other channel, essentially faking it. And I can do this on the other channels too. So let me make another new modulation from the same signal. You can make as many of these as you want. So let's modulate. Let's also duck the other rhythmic parts. So 35% on our clap, and another new mod for the same thing on our hi-hat. And I guess we probably, I'm not sure if we can we do channel A and B? I'm not sure exactly what this will do. I've never actually tried automating the sends. Yeah, let's try to automate the send. I think that means out. Let's see. I'm just going to turn it up really high for now. Unclear what it's doing. Okay, there we go. That's kind of what I want. So it's just called A. I'm not sure I necessarily want to duck the distortion. So let's put this on the reverb. And I'm doing more ducking on the reverb than on the other instruments. Yeah, it's a great mixer. The only thing I don't like about it is that because it's analog, it's only very painstakingly could you get direct outs of all of the channels if you wanted to multi-track record this. This is the Zer Mixa from Noise Engineering. It's expensive. Yeah, the Formanty hi-hat, I don't know what I did to get rid of it. I think I gave it a pitch sequence. And it's like we were talking of modular versus digital. When you change things, it can be hard to get back to where you were. I think I just added so much extra stuff that you can't really hear it anymore. That's a shame. Yeah, great mixer. Only thing I don't like is that because it's essentially giving you just stereo mix down, you can't multi-track record this without some very annoying tricks like molting copies of all of your channels, sending them both to the mixer and to your audio interface, and then recording your performance on the mixer via MIDI and replaying it for your DAW mixer to do post-production. Like, that's way more effort than I would ever put in. So it works for me, but it's not perfect. And of course you have to buy the expander separately if you want to modulate stuff. But I like that it's so much functionality in a small footprint. Like all the other modular mixers I could find that did anything like this were way bigger. Yeah, Bartender is kind of the go-to these days, but it takes a lot more space than this does to replicate the same functionality. Alright, let's change up the pitch sequence a little bit. Alright, what time is it? It's past 3. I think this is probably a good time to wind things down. I'll let this play for a minute if someone wants to sample it without me talking. All right. I don't know where that sound is coming from. I feel like I muted everything. Oh, no, I didn't. I didn't mute 4. It was behind the cable. I couldn't see it. I realized that whole time I had actually muted Desmodus, so we weren't hearing any of the reverb during that last part of the jam. Well, as they say, we'll do it live. Okay, that was fun. I guess, a little bit of tweaking at the end got that to a little bit of a better place. I think adding that stronger 4 on the floor kick, the side chain, it gave it what it needed. So good suggestions. Thank you, everyone. All right, that's a wrap. Guess I should do my usual closeout stuff. So I assume if you're still following along, then you're interested in this. Check out the rest of my channel. I've got several more streams of this style, and I'll continue to do them probably once a week, either on Fridays or Saturdays. I've got lots of other stuff on my channel. Mostly it's musical performances, lot of modular stuff, but using also some other hardware gear. If you check out my Bandcamp page, I also have a lot of like music that was recorded more traditionally in a DAW from years past. I've recently started Patreon. So if you'd like to support me there, that would be very much appreciated. Right now, that will get you access to audio downloads of any of the music that I post to the YouTube channel. And you'll help me be able to make more of these videos and do some more stuff. I'm also doing educational videos, so I've got stuff about modular tips and tricks, techniques, and increasingly I'm starting to do sort of more deep dives on individual modules. A couple of weeks ago I did, or maybe it's been 3 or 4 weeks now, I did one on this Icaria filter from Bastel Instruments, which is my favorite filter. Really awesome. Next week, I'll be releasing, as I mentioned earlier, a deep dive on Mutable Instruments Kinks, which is some really useful utility modules, or utility functions, I should say. So stay tuned for that. Thank you again for your support, and hope to see you next week. Take care, everyone. Have a good weekend.